The gate hadn't even finished opening before every head on the Hanguk International High School campus swung toward the sound, the low, expensive growl of a matte black G-Wagon with Ghanaian diplomatic plates, the kind of car that didn't ask permission to take up space. The door opened. One heel hit the pavement. Then the girl stepped out, and the morning stopped breathing. She was laughing at something on her phone, unbothered, luminous, completely unaware that 200 strangers had just decided she was the most dangerous thing to walk through those gates all year, and one boy in the back corner of the courtyard had gone very, very still. Hey! Welcome to Story Loft Originals, where passion meets romance, a fusion of black and Korean romance. My sister said I should bring in a twist, where the black student is super rich and influential and not some poor scholarship girl, so like, share and subscribe. That way I know you love the change in narrative. Let's go on. The G-Wagon came to a stop at exactly 7:52 in the morning, 8 minutes before the first bell, as if the driver had been instructed to arrive neither embarrassingly early nor fashionably late but at precisely the moment that would cause the most beautiful disruption. The school courtyard was full. Students in pressed uniforms clustered near the main steps, by the fountain, along the low walls where seniors traditionally claimed territory. The morning was bright and cold, the kind of Seoul autumn that made everything look like a film still, crisp light, rust-colored trees, breath visible in the air. Then the G-Wagon pulled through the gate. It was matte black, spotless, with tinted windows and Ghanaian diplomatic plates that no one on the campus could immediately read, but everyone immediately registered as foreign and expensive in the particular way that made conversations stop mid-sentence. The driver stepped out first, opened the rear passenger door, and stood aside. One heel emerged. Patent leather, cream-toned, the kind of shoe that cost more than most students' monthly allowances. Then the leg it belonged to. Then all of her. Zara Mensah stepped out of the car the way her mother had always told her not to, slowly, unhurried, chin up without effort, because that was simply how she held her head, laughing at something on her phone with the easy brightness of a girl who had never once in her 17 years been made to feel like she was in the wrong room. She was wearing the school uniform, but she had done something to it. The blazer was the right color. The skirt the right length. But there was a silk scarf knotted loosely at her collar, coral and gold, and her hair was out, thick, natural, carefully shaped, and the way she carried it all suggested that the uniform had agreed to work with her rather than the other way around. She looked up from her phone, scanned the courtyard with calm, curious eyes, and smiled at nothing in particular. 200 students stared. She didn't notice, or if she did, she gave no indication that it changed anything about her posture. The driver handed her a bag, not a school bag, a structured leather tote, caramel-colored, monogrammed, said something quietly, and she nodded, touched his arm once in thanks, and turned toward the main steps. The silence held for 3 full seconds. Then everyone started talking at once. Later that morning, the school administrator, a brisk woman named Cho Eun-ji, walked Zara through the registration process with the particular efficiency of someone who had handled international transfers before but was making a quiet effort not to be visibly impressed. "Your Korean language assessment scores are exceptional," Cho said, reviewing the file on her screen. "You tested into the advanced track." "I had a tutor for 2 years, Zara said, looking around the office with open curiosity. "And I watch a lot of dramas." Cho looked at her over the rim of her glasses. Zara smiled. Cho returned to her screen. "You'll be in class 2A. I'll have a student assigned to walk you through the building." "That's very kind," Zara said. "But I'll figure it out. I'm good with spaces." She was. She always had been. 12 countries across 3 continents by age 15, for different international schools, a new language each time, and a way of learning a room that her father called diplomatic instinct and her friends called Zara just knows. She read layouts, social architecture, unspoken rules. She was reading this one already, the way the administrative staff spoke in carefully modulated tones, the hierarchy visible in how desks were positioned, the photograph of the school's founder in the corridor that everyone seemed to pass without seeing. She saw it all. She filed it. She went to find class 2A. She found it on the first try. Class 2A was the kind of classroom that tried to look casual about being the best class in the school and failed. The students inside had the particular posture of people who knew they were watched and had developed sophisticated indifference to it. Smart, polished, competitive in the way that looked like effortless excellence from the outside and felt like chronic low-grade anxiety from the inside. Zara walked in 30 seconds before the teacher. 22 heads turned. She found a seat near the window, set her bag down with a small thud that somehow carried, and pulled out a notebook, cream-colored, hardcover, with a small Ghanaian flag sticker in the corner, and looked up at the board with the expression of someone genuinely interested in what was about to happen. The girl at the next desk said, in careful English, "You're the new transfer." "Zara," she confirmed, and held out her hand. The girl shook it, slightly surprised by the gesture. "Soo-yeon. Do you have a copy of last week's notes? I could borrow to catch up. I'll photograph them and give them back." Soo-yeon stared at her for a beat. Then she opened her binder. It was, Soo-yeon would tell her friend later that afternoon, not that she was trying to be nice. It was that Zara had asked the way you asked someone for something you fully expected them to say yes to, not with presumption but with a kind of baseline warmth, as though she had already decided that Soo-yeon was trustworthy and was simply acting accordingly. It was very hard to say no to that. He was in the back left corner of the classroom. He was always in the back left corner of the classroom. Ryu Tayo didn't sit there because it was the seat furthest from the teacher. He sat there because it was the seat with the best sight lines to both doors and the window, which was a habit he developed so gradually he no longer remembered forming it. He was reading when she walked in. He did not look up immediately. He finished his paragraph first, something in him always finished the paragraph first, and then, because the atmospheric change in the room was something even a focused person couldn't fully ignore, he looked up. He took her in the way he took in most things, quickly, methodically, storing rather than reacting. New student. Transfer. International, he clocked the car from the window earlier, had already filtered it as not his concern. She was Ghanaian, he noted, the diplomatic plates now contextualized by the scarf and the easy internationalism of her bearing. She was, he paused on this for slightly longer than he intended, striking. Not in the way that made him adjust his posture, but in the specific way of something you see and then find your eyes returning to without deciding to. She borrowed Soo-yeon's notes. He returned to his book. He was on the next page before he consciously acknowledged that she'd looked up from the notebook twice and both times in his direction. He did not look up again. Ryu Tayo was the kind of student the school had built its reputation around and tried not to brag about too loudly because the real ones were never the ones you could brag about. His father ran Ryu Capital, one of the oldest private investment firms in South Korea. His mother sat on the boards of 2 foundations and collected influence the way other people collected art. The family was old money by Korean standards, which meant it was not loud about itself, did not need to be, and had been waiting patiently for 3 generations for the rest of the world to come to their correct conclusions on its own. Tayo had been at Hanguk International since the first year, always first in his class, never in the photographs that went up on the bulletin boards, never at the parties that existed on the periphery of school life, never in the center of any room he inhabited. He was 17, quiet in a way that was not shyness. Shyness had its own recognizable frequency, an anxious vibration just below the surface. Tayo had no anxious vibration. He was simply contained, the way a controlled reaction was contained, fully present, fully capable, choosing not to release. Boys respected him without knowing exactly why. Girls were interested in him without knowing exactly what they would do with the interest. He neither encouraged nor dismissed either. He went to class. He read. He ran in the early morning before anyone else was on the track. He had 2 people in his life he trusted and approximately 0 patience for anything that wasted time. He noticed the new transfer had finished Soo-yeon's notes and returned them with a small handwritten thank you on a sticky note before the teacher even came in. He turned another page. By the end of the first day, Zara Mensaboteng had done the following: acquired a map of the school from the janitor's bulletin board after the administrator's copy turned out to be outdated, correctly identified the 3 distinct social hierarchies. of Class 2A without being told about any of them, made for people laugh in a language that was not her first, and found the one coffee vending machine in the building that dispensed something drinkable. She had also acquired an enemy, though she didn't know it yet. Her name was Song Ji-hai, and she was the kind of beautiful that required significant infrastructure, careful maintenance, deliberate presentation, a team of people whose job it was to make sure the image held. She was also, by every measure that mattered in the social economy of Hanguk International, the girl. The one who set temperatures in rooms. The one the boys circled and the girls watched and the teachers addressed with a particular careful politeness. Ji-hai had walked past the G-wagon that morning with her usual smooth indifference, and something in her chest had gone very tight, and she hadn't liked it. By second period, she had seen the class watching Zara the way they had not watched anyone in 2 years. By lunch, she had catalogued the problem. By the end of the day, she had begun to solve it. The cafeteria was arranged the way cafeterias always arranged themselves, which was to say that the social order was expressed completely in geography. Ji-hai's table was central, elevated by 2 steps on a platform that technically existed for announcements but had been colonized by the senior inner circle so long that no one remembered it being used for anything else. Zara didn't know this yet. She came through the cafeteria line with a tray, assessed the room with her usual fast read, spotted an empty space at a table near the window where 2 girls she recognized from class were sitting, and walked toward them. She passed Ji-hai's table. Ji-hai said, in Korean, loud enough to carry, "She's wearing the scarf wrong. It's not a uniform item." The table around her laughed, the way people laughed at Ji-hai's observations, half genuine, half survival instinct. Zara slowed. She understood Korean. She set her tray down at the nearest empty space, which happened to be at the table directly across from Ji-hai's platform, and then she looked up with an expression so perfectly composed it could have passed for not having heard. But she had heard. And she looked at Ji-hai with a smile that was entirely warm and entirely unafraid and said, in Korean that was accent-touched but grammatically immaculate, "It's a diplomatic courtesy scarf. My father's office sends them. I can get you one if you like, you'd look lovely in coral." The cafeteria held its breath. Ji-hai's smile didn't move. But something behind her eyes did. Zara turned to the girls at the table, introduced herself, and began eating. 3 tables away, Ryu Taiyo had his book open and was not eating his lunch and was looking at the page. He was not reading the page. He was very aware, in the precise way he was aware of most things, of exactly what had just happened across the cafeteria. He returned to his book. That evening, in the study room on the 4th floor, a glass-walled space lined with shelves that most students used for group revision and some students used to be seen doing group revision, Zara was alone. She'd told Seyun she'd join them later. She needed 1 hour first. She had her laptop, 3 textbooks open, a notebook with color-coded sections she'd set up in the first 20 minutes after arriving home to the apartment the Ghanaian embassy maintained for the governor's family during the posting. The apartment was large and quiet and full of her mother's choices, warm fabrics, good lamps, photographs that followed the arc of a family that moved constantly and kept the evidence of everywhere they'd been. She was reviewing the curriculum gap. 2 chapters in chemistry she hadn't covered at her last school, a different framework in economics, a notation system in advanced math that she'd need to map against what she knew. She worked through it. Methodically, the way she'd always worked, not because she was a natural scholar. Her mother was quick to tell people that Zara was not a natural scholar, she was a natural learner, which was a different thing. A natural scholar was comfortable with what they knew. A natural learner was comfortable with not knowing yet. She heard footsteps. She didn't look up. The footsteps stopped outside the study room door. Then a student came in, not Seyun, not anyone she recognized, dropped a bag on a table at the far end of the room, and sat down without a word. She looked up. It was him. The quiet one from the back corner. She hadn't heard his name yet, but she'd noticed him the way you noticed a room temperature change, not dramatically, just as a fact of the environment. He opened a textbook and didn't look at her. She looked at him for 1 moment, assessed, then went back to her chemistry. 20 minutes passed in complete silence. Then she said, without looking up, is the economics notation system different here because of a reform in 2019, or has it always been this way? A pause. 2019, he said. His voice was low, unhurried. Did it make the curriculum better or just different? Another pause. Shorter this time. Different, he said. Whether it's better depends on what you think economics is for. She finally looked up. He was still looking at his book. She looked at him for a second longer than she'd planned to. Zara, she said. I know, he said. She raised an eyebrow. He turned a page. Tayo, he said, as if the information were simply being filed rather than offered. She looked at him for one more moment, the kind of look she gave to things she intended to think about later, and returned to her chemistry. The room was quiet. Outside, the Seoul night pressed blue and gold against the windows. Somewhere below them, a bus sighed through an intersection. 3 days into the week, the rumors had already started, not about the elevator kind, but the cafeteria kind, the kind that spread through a school's messaging apps in fragments and screenshots and reactions that built the story faster than the story could correct itself. By Wednesday morning, half the grade believed Zara's father was a spy. By afternoon, the other half believed she'd transferred specifically because she'd been expelled from her previous school in London for dating a teacher. Neither was true. Both spread. Soo-yeon told her over breakfast in the school's morning courtyard, apologetically, like she was delivering weather information for a storm already visible on the horizon. Zara ate her mandarin orange in 3 neat segments and said, "Let me guess. Ji-hai." Soo-yeon said nothing, which was confirmation enough. Zara looked across the courtyard to where Ji-hai stood in the center of her usual cluster, radiant and composed, and then looked back at her orange. "You're not worried?" Soo-yeon asked. Zara considered this genuinely. "My father is the governor of the Ashanti region and a 2-term National Development Commissioner. I have been photographed at 3 international summits and once accidentally walked into a live press conference in Accra in my school uniform." She finished the last segment. "A school rumor is light work." Soo-yeon stared at her. "But thank you for telling me," Zara added. "That was kind." Across the courtyard, near the gate where the school's senior track team was returning from morning run, Ryu Tayo passed without slowing, water bottle in hand, eyes forward. He caught, involuntarily, with the peripheral accuracy that was simply how he processed space, the image of Zara in the morning light, laughing now at something Soo-yeon had said, wholly unbothered, coral scarf catching the wind. He looked away. He walked faster. His chest was doing something he didn't have an immediate name for. "Yeah besties, I trust you are enjoying this video. See, our black heroine isn't some pitiful scholarship student from Africa who finds love that she's scared of, but she's a confident, super rich, intelligent and beautiful girl who knows the stuff she's made of. Hurry, let's get back to Zara." By the end of the first week, 4 boys had asked Zara for her number. She had given none of them anything except a polite smile and the quiet, cheerful indifference of a girl who had been navigating male attention since she was 14 and had long since decided it was background noise unless proven otherwise. Park Hyun-soo, who was captain of the football team and had a face his mother had prayed over, asked her by the lockers on Thursday with the particular confidence of someone who had never been told no in a way that stuck. "Dinner," he said. "Saturday. I know a place in Itaewon." "That's very sweet," Zara said, pulling her chemistry binder from the shelf. "Is that a yes?" "It's a that's very sweet," she said, and walked away. Word spread, as words do, with the particular velocity of information that is both entertaining and slightly humbling to the person it concerns. By Friday, the story of how Zara had turned down Park Hyun-soo had become corridor legend. She was unbothered. She was warm. She said good morning to the janitors by name and had already memoized the school timetable and could hold a conversation in Korean about macroeconomic policy that made the economics teacher visibly excited. She was not performing any of this. There was no performance. She was simply, entirely, herself. This was, for Sung Ji-hai, the most infuriating possible version of a rival. Ji-hai could fight calculation. She was excellent at fighting calculation. She could dismantle a girl who was trying. But a girl who wasn't trying, who didn't seem aware she was in a competition that required something different. Something uglier. Something Ji-hai had never needed before but found herself reaching for now, with both hands. She found her instruments on a Wednesday evening. Two boys from the grade above, not serious students, not serious about anything, who had been orbiting Ji-hai's social circle long enough to know she occasionally required things done that she couldn't put her name on. She met them near the back stairwell, where the cameras had been broken since March and maintenance had not fixed them. "There's a girl," she said. "New transfer. Governor's daughter. She let that land. She thinks she's untouchable." The taller one smiled. "What do you need?" Ji-hai told them. She had acquired, through a chain of connections she had been careful to make untraceable, 2 small capsules. The plan was clean in the way that evil plans always appeared clean before they weren't. Get close to Zara at the Thursday social mixer the student council hosted each month, slip something into her drink, let her become disoriented, photograph her in a compromising arrangement, post it before morning. By Friday, the governor's daughter would be a scandal. The school would distance itself. The rumor about why she'd really transferred would right itself. Ji-hai walked away from the stairwell with her hands steady and her face composed and something cold and settled in her eyes that had not been there before she'd made the decision. She did not examine it. She was too committed now to examine it. What she didn't know was that one of the two boys, the shorter one, a third-year named Wu Ji-tai who had agreed mostly out of social pressure and was already regretting it, had a younger brother in Class 2B. And his younger brother had, that same Wednesday evening, made the mistake of mentioning it to his seatmate. And his seatmate, who owed Ryu Taio nothing except the residue of a favor from 2 semesters ago, sent a message at 9:47 p.m. that said only, "Something's happening at the mixer tomorrow." The new girl from Ghana. Yushol's howled no. Taio read it once. He put his phone down. He picked it up again. He made 2 calls, both brief, both to people who owed him considerably more than a text message, and by 10:30 he had enough of the shape of it to sit very still at his desk for a long moment and feel something move through him that was not composure at all. He went to sleep late. He did not sleep well. The Thursday mixer was held in the school's event hall, strung lights, music kept tastefully low, the careful social performance of students who were too old for school dances and too young to call it networking. Zara came because Seyun asked her to, and because she had decided in the first week that she would not hide from any room. She wore a deep rust-colored dress, her own clothes rather than uniform, and her hair was out and full and she moved through the hall the way she moved through every space, with the easy, present warmth of someone who was genuinely interested in where she was. Within 20 minutes, she had a drink in hand and was in the middle of a conversation with 3 students from the International Studies track who wanted to know about her experience at her school in London. Ji-hai was at the periphery, watching, her own drink untouched, her expression pleasant and patient. She had told Ji-tai, "When she sets her cup down, you're close enough. She'll set it down." People always set their cups down. Zara set her cup on the table beside her to gesture with both hands while she described something. Ji-tai moved. He dropped the capsules in the drink and was about to move away when a hand closed around his arm. Not rough. Not a scene. Just a grip, firm and absolute, and a voice said drink it. Ji-tai turned his head. Ryu Taio was standing beside him with the expression he had worn in the back left corner of every classroom for 2 years, contained, certain, giving nothing away. Now. Ji-tai picked up the cup and drank it content before an amazed Zara could speak up, then Ryu-tai motioned to her to keep quiet and sit still, then he walked with arms around Ji-tai and took him to a nearby class where he slept on a desk, then he went for Ji-hai, found her in the hall, he crossed the room to where she stood and stopped in front of her and said nothing for a moment, giving her time to understand that he already knew everything, that the time for managing appearances had passed. Ji-hai's composed expression held for approximately 3 seconds. Then it didn't. Taio. Tomorrow morning, he said, you'll go to the school counselor and withdraw from the student council events committee. You'll cite academic pressure. That's all you'll say. He paused. And if I ever have this specific kind of conversation with you again, I won't make it quiet. He walked away. Ji-hai stood alone in the center of the mixer, the lights still warm, the music still low, the room still full of people who had seen nothing. She did not speak to Zara again that semester. Tayo did not tell Zara much. He said Ji-tai had mixed rum in her drink, so he asked him to drink up. He had his reasons, clean, logical, the kind he could defend. She hadn't been hurt, she didn't need the weight of knowing how close it had been. Telling her would make her afraid of a room she currently wasn't afraid of, and she deserved to keep not being afraid of rooms. He knew, if he were being precise about it, that there was also a less logical reason. That telling her meant accounting for why he'd known. And accounting for why he'd known meant accounting for how specifically he'd been paying attention. And he wasn't ready, yet, to say that out loud. What he did instead was join her group project. The economics teacher assigned a group presentation the following Monday and let the class form their own groups. Within 90 seconds, the room rearranged itself into its social geometry. Soo-yeon moved toward Zara. 2 others followed. A group of 4 forming. Then Hyunsoo, already over the group limit, looked at Zara's cluster and started to move. "She's already in my group," Tayo said, from the back of the room. The class went quiet. The teacher blinked. "Ryu. You formed a group." "Now I have," he said. A silence. The teacher moved on. Zara looked at Tayo across the room with the expression of someone handed an unexpected thing and deciding very quickly what it was. She wrote his name in her notebook under group and said nothing. He sat forward for the first time all semester. They met in the 4th floor study room that Wednesday. 4 of them, Zara, Tayo, Soo-yeon, and Kim Dong-jin, who was extraordinary with data and allergic to eye contact. Their topic was the Korean Financial Recovery Post, 1998. "My father uses it as a case study," Zara said, setting up her color-coded notebook, "for post-crisis governance restructuring. Specifically how IMF conditions interacted with domestic industrial policy." Dong-jin looked up for the first time. "Your father knows the 1998 recovery. He wrote about it. He did a paper at LSE comparing it to Ghana's HIPC experience. I can find the citation." Soo-yeon looked at Tayo. Tayo was looking at Zara. Not the cataloging look he usually gave things. Something else, the specific attention of someone who has heard what they didn't expect and is recalibrating. Something moved in the room. Not loudly. Soo-yeon felt it and looked at her notebook. Dong-jin typed faster. They worked for 90 minutes. Tayo pulled data. Zara built the policy timeline. Dong-jin handled graphs. Soo-yeon edited with the serenity of someone entirely comfortable with their role. At the end, when Dong-jin and Soo-yeon had packed up and left, Tayo was closing his laptop when Zara said, without looking up from her notes, "You're not what I expected." He stopped. "In the classroom," she said, "you looked like someone who had already decided the world wasn't worth much attention." He was quiet for a moment. "I had." "What changed?" He looked at her. She was still looking at her notes, pen moving, as if the question were casual. It wasn't casual. He knew she knew it wasn't. "The methodology," he said finally, "was more interesting than I anticipated." She looked up. She held his gaze. Then she smiled, small, warm, entirely unguarded, and looked back down. Then she said, "Thank you for the other night. I know you prevented something bad from happening, I can't say what but I know." He nodded, closed his laptop and left. On the stairs, he slowed once. Put a hand briefly on the wall. Kept going. The book appeared on her desk on a Friday morning. A translated Ghanaian novel. She'd mentioned it once, in passing, to Soo-yeon, 3 weeks ago, that she missed being able to read things from home. No note. No name. She picked it up and held it. Looked across the room. Tayo was writing in his notebook. Not looking at her. She opened the first page and read the dedication, and the warmth that moved through her chest was something she had been refusing to name for 2 weeks and was running out of room to keep refusing. It was Soo-yeon who finally said it, on a Tuesday, over lunch, with the directness of someone who had been waiting patiently for someone else to say it first and had run out of patience. He watches you, she said, the way people watch things they are afraid of losing. Zara put down her chopsticks. We're in a group project. The project was submitted last week. Zara said nothing. He hasn't sat in the back corner since he joined your group, Soo-yeon said. He sits 2 rows forward now. Exactly adjacent to the window. A pause. Which is exactly adjacent to you. Zara looked at her food. You already know, Soo-yeon said. I know, Zara said quietly. Then what are you waiting for? Zara was quiet for a moment. I don't know yet if he's the kind of person who says things, she said, or the kind of person who does things instead of saying them. And I need to know which kind before. She stopped. Soo-yeon considered this. The book, she said. Zara looked at her. The book on your desk, Soo-yeon said. With no note. That's your answer. The confession didn't come with a speech. It came on a Tuesday evening in the study room during what should have been a final review session that neither of them actually needed. Dong-jin had left early. Soo-yeon had a call. And it was just them, the city below, and a silence that had been building for weeks and had run out of space. Zara said, You left the book. He didn't pretend not to know. Yes. You remembered I said that. I remember most things, he said. But I remembered that specifically. Why? He was quiet in the way that was never evasion, the precision of choosing words that mattered. Because you said it like you weren't asking for anything, he said. And you should have been able to ask. She held his gaze and felt something unlock that she'd been keeping shut since the first morning he'd said she's already in my group across a room that went quiet, since the first time she'd looked up from borrowed notes and found him already looking back. Tayo, she said. I know, he said quietly. It's complicated. It doesn't have to be. Something in him, very slowly, came undone. There's something I should tell you, he said. About the Thursday mixer. About why I was there, specifically, at a specific moment. She waited. He told her. Carefully, factually, with no embellishment. What Ji-tai had been about to do. What Ji-hai had arranged. What had and hadn't happened. The room was very still when he finished. She sat with it for a long moment. He watched her face move through things, recognition, anger, something raw, something that settled finally into a stillness that was not calm but was something stronger than calm. You didn't tell me, she said. No. Why? Because you walked into every room like it couldn't touch you, he said. He said, and I didn't want to be the one who took that from you. She looked at him for a long time. That, she said, finally, is the most Tayo reason for anything I have ever heard. Something moved in his face. The corner of his mouth. Not yet a smile, the honest approach of one. Dinner, he said. Saturday. Somewhere real. Yes, she said. Saturday. The city spread gold below them. Outside, Seoul breathed its enormous evening breath. And in the 4th-floor study room of Hanguk International High School, Ryu Tayo closed his laptop and did not open his book, because for the first time in longer than he could accurately calculate, there was something in the room more worth attending to. She was looking at the window. Her profile was lit by the city. The coral lip gloss, she always wore coral, caught the light. He looked at her the way he looked at things he intended to keep. She turned and found him looking. She didn't look away. Neither did he. Months later, on a Saturday that smelled of first winter and roasted street chestnuts, he stopped on the bridge above the Han River, looked at her, and said something quiet and unadorned and entirely without performance. She said yes before he finished the sentence. The city went on around them, indifferent and luminous, and they stood in it together, the governor's daughter and the quiet rich Korean boy from the back corner, and it was enough. It was, in every sense that mattered, everything. Wow, this is quite a story, I wish we could go on, but here's how we round up the story. If you have ideas about how the story should continue, drop them in the comment section and we can hitch up the idea. Please do not forget to like, share and subscribe, cause this is a new narrative and regeneration for Black students in Korea. Bye for now.